All right, that's welcome, Daniel. Hi, Daniel.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Would you please do a brief self introduction to our students?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Daniel Pell. I am a student at Rio Hondo College in Southern California. I'm currently taking computer science courses, and our topic for today's presentation is about sports and sports culture in America.
Hmm. Okay.
I'll go ahead and I'll share my screen. All right, so what we're going to start off with first is a little bit of an overview of what we'll be talking about today. So, there will be four major sports that we'll be talking about. That includes American football, which is, I believe that you guys have football over there, but over here we call it soccer, which we'll also be talking about. And we'll be talking about basketball and baseball. And some of the things we'll talk about for each sport is what it's like during the regular season. So, what are the teams like outside of school? Just the normal, regular school or teams and the travel and tournament teams. We'll talk about what the teams are like in school and then what it's like at a college level. And then we'll also take a look at the professional season of each of these teams. What time of year does it happen? What does it really look like? And then what is the biggest event that each sport has? So, if and if you have any questions, maybe write it down. There will be a time at the end of the presentation where you can ask and we can talk about it. But before we get started, I'd like to ask if some people could maybe just say, what is your favorite sport and why?
I like badminton because I can play it like inside a building because I hate the sun.
It's a very good reason.
I like swimming. I like water sports.
It's cool. Anyone else want to share? Okay, then we will move on to the presentation. So the first sport that we'll talk about is American football. So first, I'm going to describe kind of what is American football. In case you might not know, it's mainly popular over here, as far as I know, not as much so in different countries. So it's very similar to soccer, where you have two teams of around 10 people and there's two zones on either side that the teams try to get the ball into. So depending on what side of the field you're on, you try to get it the ball, which is shaped kind of like a diamond or an oval. It's a weird shape for a ball, and they try to get it to the other side of the field. There's also these big yellow Y-shaped goalposts that you may have seen before, and what they'll do for those is they will try to kick the ball into that so that they can score extra points. So it's a very, depending on how you play, it can either be a very aggressive sport where people try to tackle whoever has the ball, but they wear armor so that they don't really get hurt, and it's a pretty fun sport to play. So, starting with the regular season, it includes ages kids who are 5 to 18 when you're considered an adult. And they're more city-based or near city-based. So this means that the people who you play with are people from your city or people from the cities that are just around wherever you live. And it's more about having fun and learning how to play the sport rather than it being really competitive or playing against these really good players. The next thing you have is travel or tournament teams, and they kind of work the same way where they are multi-city or state-based. So the people you play against will be people who are from cities that are much further away or people who are from different states. Sometimes you travel to play games or tournaments in these other areas or states. And it's a very fun experience to get to travel and get to see what other teams are like in different areas. It's much more competitive because you're playing against better people, people who are more committed, and it's for people who like the game more so, and it's when you have an understanding of how to play. The next thing is high school teams. So for high school teams, it's even more competitive, probably more so than regular season or travel, and you have a team, a large amount of people, and they'll play against other schools. And then you have the college level, and most people, it's a little bit different. When you're on a high school team, you don't automatically go play for college. There's a lot less people who will move on to college level playing, but it's very competitive. It's considered a gateway to professional leagues, so they take it very seriously. And people who are playing will try to do their best so that they can get noticed for some of these well-known teams. And then some other facts about football is there's also private teams and clubs. They're not as well known, but they are very competitive, a lot higher level of gameplay, and it's mainly for people who want to get better with their skills rather than have fun or enjoy playing. And it mainly consists of guys. It's a very aggressive sport, so I mean, I understand why not as many females play the sport, and especially at a higher level as well. So speaking of which, for the professional season, what we have is called the National Football League. So that's also called the NFL. It begins in early September and it ends in early January when they begin to play the playoffs or the final competitive games for the season. So teams will compete all across the country and different states and cities, eventually leading to the final game in the Super Bowl. And the Super Bowl is the biggest event in football and maybe even the biggest sporting event in America, really. It's a very, very big sporting event. It's very competitive. Only the best of the best get to play against each other in one game to determine who's the winner. It's a very entertaining thing because they do a lot to make it entertaining for everybody to watch. They have a halftime show where singers and performers will show up and do some kind of performance with all kinds of effects and lights to entertain everybody and give the players a break in the middle of the game. And they also have very creative commercials for people who are watching it from their television, where it'll be either really funny or creative, and people talk about them all the time. And it's popular for everyone. So even people who don't play football or who don't play sports will get together and party, celebrate, to watch the game. It's almost like a holiday over here when it happens because there's so many people celebrating or going for whatever team they like best. So moving on to the next topic, now we have basketball. So the regular season, very similar to football, where you have ages 5 to 18. It is, although it's different because it is less competitive than the other sports, and it's more about having fun and learning how to play. And I think the reason for this is because as you get older, it becomes more about how tall you are And so people who are not very tall, or just when you're younger, it's just about getting to experience it and having fun. And now for travel and tournament teams, same thing as football. It's more competitive. You get to play against people from cities that are further away or different states. Now, high school teams is where you get to see a jump in the competitiveness of basketball. And people get a lot more serious. Height plays a big factor. They're very tall. All the people I saw in high school were just much taller than me, and they play against other schools. College level it works a little bit differently than football, where a lot of the people who played in high school directly move on to college, and this is because it's already very narrowed down who gets to play in high school, whereas in football they let a lot of people on even if they're not good. But in college, for basketball, you have to be pretty good to make it onto the team. So it's the next level for anybody who was in high school. And again, it's a gateway to the professional leagues. People notice you and then they will maybe offer you to join the team from there. And then some other facts. There's other private clubs and teams as well. A lot of people do like to play basketball in their free time compared to other sports, I'd say. Mainly because for basketball, you can play it in a lot of places like parks, and it doesn't really matter how many people you have. If you only have 2 people, you can still play it. If you have 10 people, you can still play it. So it goes well no matter how many people you have. But it's mostly guys who played over here. But there still are a lot more female teams, and especially professional female teams who play the sport. So the professional league is called the National Basketball Association, which begins in October and ends in June. The teams play across the country, but this time they're divided by the East and the West sides. So the teams in the East will play against the East teams, and the teams in the West will play against the teams in the West. Now, the biggest event for basketball is called the NBA Finals. It's not as big as the Super Bowl, but it's still a big basketball event where the best team from the East and the best team from the West will get to compete against each other to become the best team of the entire league. So it's a very competitive match, and they usually play more than one game in this case to determine who is the best team. So for our next topic, we have baseball. So the difference here for regular season is that it's a lot more competitive than other sports. That includes football, basketball, and soccer. And this happens at a very early age, around 9 to 10. It starts getting very serious, and they expect you to have outside training or knowledge, and sometimes it's even required to just play with these teams. So they expect you to have things like people train you, going to sports camps, or even going to batting cages to practice how you bat, how you throw the ball. So it can be fun though for people who enjoy getting to really hone their abilities. So it's a very interesting sport in that case. Now, travel and tournament is also a little bit different. I would say it's more of an extension of the regular season than something itself, because you basically go from one season right to the next, and it's the same level of competitiveness. You play with basically the same people. So it's for people who are serious about the sport, they'll usually do both. And then you have high school teams, and it's very similar. It's not more competitive, but it's not less competitive. The same people who played in travel and tournament will be playing on the high school team. Now, when you get to college, it's different. There's a big jump in how competitive people are, but there's also a jump in how many people are playing. A lot of people will be on the college team because injuries are very common for people at that level, but it's very competitive because more so than other sports, you will have people who are scouting, which means that they're looking for the next big player who they can add onto their team, somebody who throws the ball a certain way or just knows what to do, who's fast, reactions, anything like that. They'll look at statistics more so than really any other sport, and they'll say like, yeah, I want this guy or I want this girl on my team. So it's very popular with both genders, more so than the other two sports, because I think each one has its own league. You have baseball, but you also have softball for females, and it's the same thing, but this allows more females to play it this way and more to get involved. Now, for the professional season, we have the Major League Baseball, is what it's called. Begins in early April and ends in early October. And you might have noticed that a lot of these sports, they don't happen at the same time. And that's because people wouldn't be able to really watch or keep up with everything at the same time. So this gives people a break and lets them kind of move on to different sports whenever something new is happening. And it also gives the players a break so they don't have to play in the middle of summer when it's hot or in the middle of winter when it's cold. The two major professional leagues, though, are called the American League and the National League. So the one that they both fall under is Major League Baseball, but there's two leagues for each. So the biggest event of the baseball season is called the World Series, even though it only happens here in America. It's a bit of an ironic name, but that's what they decided to call it. So at the end of the playoffs, the best team from both leagues will compete against each other, kind of like with basketball, where you had the best team from the East and the best team from the West play against each other. It's very similar, but in this case, it's the best team from the American League and then the best team from the National League will play against each other. And they will compete in a series of around 7 games, very long, to see who's the ultimate champion of the league. And so it's not as big as a Super Bowl, but again, it's similar in the sense that even if you don't pay attention to baseball or if you don't watch it, people pay attention to these games and they like to see who's winning, who's in the lead, because unlike the Super Bowl, there's a lot of games to watch. People like to keep track of who they think is going to win, and they it's a very interesting event in that sense. And now for our final topic, we have soccer. So this one, we kind of tone down the competitiveness during the regular season. It's more about learning how to play, again, having fun. This is where you would start if you wanted to start playing soccer. Then you have travel and tournament teams. This has a big jump in competitiveness because the people that you play against, they're a lot better, they're more in shape, they know what to do, but it's still very fun, and it's a really good experience for people who just want to keep playing more soccer. And then you have high school teams. They're about the same as travel and tournament teams, and if you're on a high school team, you might also be on a travel and tournament team, but sometimes they only want you to do one or the other just because they like your commitment to their team. And if you're doing both, you might not be able to commit to both teams. Next, you have the college level, and again, it's even more competitive than high school, and it's a gateway to professional leagues, but not as much as the other sports. And the reason for this is because the private clubs and teams for soccer, they're a lot more popular, and a lot more people will join them to not really have fun, but just because it's very competitive, you get to get a lot better with your skills, and most people from those clubs and teams will then go straight to the professional leagues. So that's your main way of getting there. And then it's very popular with all genders. There's a lot of females who play it, especially. And unlike baseball, where it's separated by baseball and softball, for soccer, it's just soccer. And you have girls and you have guys. And I don't think it's really more one or the other gender. It's very equal in who plays. And for the professional season, it's called the Major League Soccer. It begins in February and ends in October. Teams all across the country play against each other, leading to the MLS Cup Final. MLS is short for Major League Soccer. Now, even though they have the cup final, the biggest event for soccer here is the World Cup. And you might have heard of this because this is the tournament that takes place every 2 years with teams from countries all around the world. So even though it's not just an American thing, it's still the biggest thing over here because we have so many people who are different ethnicities and they get to root for their own countries really or wherever they came from and just say like, yeah, I really like this team. My mom was from there, my dad was from there, I was from there. So a lot of people are interested in it and it's it's the most unique event because there's no just one game that everybody watches. People watch games at the beginning, they watch games in the middle, they watch it at the end. It's really more of an adventure for people to check into, and it's very popular for people to watch. And when it's World Cup season, there's a lot of soccer themed events happening all around the country. So, just as a recap summary of what we talked about, the biggest sporting event in American football is called the Super Bowl. Their league is the National Football League. Then for basketball, their biggest event is the NBA Finals, and their league is the National Basketball Association. For baseball, their biggest event is the World Series, and their league is the Major League Baseball. And then for soccer, the biggest event is the World Cup, and their league is Major League Soccer. And that's it. You made it to the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them now, and I will do my best to answer them.
Do you join any of your school team?
I did not join any. Well, actually, I joined the track and field team at my school, and I played soccer outside of school because I didn't want the soccer in school and outside of school to compete with each other. And it is more. There's more favoritism in school for who gets to be on the team than outside of school. But yeah, track and field and cross country, they're really fun, and I enjoyed doing that in school.
So guys, do you have any questions for our teacher? We still have 5 more minutes.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, then I would like to ask, which sport of the 4 that I talked about today did you find the most interesting and why?
可以用中文吗？
Can they speak Chinese?
Well, I won't understand it, unfortunately, but if you want to share with everyone in Chinese, then you can go ahead and do that.
我觉得最有趣的是就是足球，因为我们台湾不会常踢到美式足球。
Wait, soccer like soccer or American football? 是美式足球还是就是用那个足球黑白的那种？
就是美式足球，台湾比较少踢。
Yeah, true. American football is like really unfamiliar with me, for me because there's like no football team anywhere, and I have never seen football game anywhere. I know that the balls are really hard to throw.
Yeah, it's really weird in the sense that you have to rotate the ball as you throw it. So they throw it in a strange way where your hand will go like that as you throw the ball so that the ball spins while it's going through the air. Whereas a baseball, it's just a round ball, you can throw it. And baseball spins too, but you don't have to necessarily spin it to make it go a long distance. So, and yeah, and the naming is kind of confusing with how they have it. I'm not sure why they made it that way, but somebody a long time ago decided to call it football and to call it soccer, and that's just how it happened. So they made it confusing for everybody.
Are the helmets heavy? Because they look really heavy, and the thing that they wear on their shoulder.
Yeah, I'd say they're not super heavy, but they are a little bit heavy, and they're definitely slower with all the gear on than without it, because they also wear like the body armor and the shoulder pads and knee pads and all this gear to make sure that they don't get hurt when they play.
So does anyone like basketball here or baseball? Nobody?
Mostly
can
the
talk.
boys, I guess. Because
You
in
can.
my school, they use the basketball for 躲避球.
You mean dodgeball?
Yeah.
Yeah, people like to play dodgeball over here too, mainly in middle school and elementary school. We play it during gym class, and we also have different areas, like a place called Sky Zone, where it's just filled with trampolines, and you get to play dodgeball while jumping on trampolines. So it's a really fun experience to play, and everybody will tell you I'm like the best dodgeball player they've ever seen. So, uh, it's very fun, and there are not too many like professional teams as far as I know for dodgeball, but yeah, they do it over here too. Okay, so I believe it's time for me to leave. Hope you all
Mhm.
enjoyed the presentation on sports and maybe learned a thing or two about what it's like over here. And thank you all for being a part of this. And your English is all really good. And thank you for participating. Hope you enjoy the rest of your presentations.
Thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.